The number one reason AI rollouts fail inside HR departments has nothing to do with the tools. It has everything to do with what nobody did in the first 30 days. Today, we fix that. Welcome to the Blair AI Rollout Podcast, where operations leaders get a structured, practical path to rolling out AI inside their organizations. I'm Steve, creator of the Blair AI Rollout Framework, and if you're responsible for workflows, teams, or outcomes, you're in the right place. No hype, no chaos, just a clear, responsible way to move AI forward inside your organization.
Listen to questions.
This week's listener question comes from Rhonda. Rhonda is the director of human resources at a mid-sized energy company, and she says, Steve, I heard your last episode, and it really resonated. I'm an HR director at an energy company, and I know I need to start somewhere with AI, but I'm paralyzed. I have sensitive employee data, compliance obligations, and a team that's honestly a little scared of what AI means for their jobs. Leadership is pushing for a plan, and I don't even know where to begin. What do I actually do in my first 30 days before I touch a single tool? Rhonda, first of all, thank you for listening and for sending this in. And I want you to hear this clearly. What you're feeling right now is not weakness. It's wisdom. The fact that you're asking what to do before touching a single tool tells me you already understand something that most organizations get completely backwards. You're not paralyzed, you're careful. And in HR, where you're dealing with sensitive employee data, compliance requirements, and a workforce that's watching how leadership handles this, careful is exactly the right instinct. Rhonda's question is going to drive everything we cover today. And if you're an operations leader, a director, or a manager sitting on a similar situation, stay with us. This one's for you. So Rhonda, let's start at the very beginning. And I mean the very beginning. Before you open a single AI tool, before you schedule a single training session, before you say a single word to leadership about your AI plan, you need to get honest about where you actually are right now. And I don't mean where you wish you were. I mean where you actually are. Here's what that looks like in practice for an HR director at an energy company. First question, is AI already showing up in your HR department? And before you say no, think carefully. Is anyone on your team using ChatGPT to draft job descriptions? Is anyone using AI to summarize employee feedback or generate policy language? Is anyone using any tool, even a free one they downloaded themselves, to make their daily HR work faster? Because in most organizations, the answer is yes. And HR leaders are often the last to know. Second question, what does your compliance landscape actually require? Energy companies operate under strict regulatory frameworks. HR sits on some of the most sensitive data in the entire organization: employee records, compensation data, performance reviews, medical information, termination documentation. Before AI touches any of that, you need to know exactly what your obligations are. Not approximately, exactly. Third question, what does your workforce actually know about AI right now? You mentioned your team is nervous. Rhonda, that nervousness is data. It tells you where the trust gaps are, and trust gaps, if ignored, become resistance. And resistance kills even the best AI rollout before it starts. Getting honest about where you are isn't glamorous. It won't make a great slide deck for leadership, but it is the single most important thing you can do in your first 30 days, because everything else gets built on top of it. So you've done the honest assessment. You know where AI is already showing up. You understand your compliance landscape. You have a feel for where your team's trust gaps are. Now what? Now you protect what matters before you build anything. And in HR, this step is not optional. It is not a formality. It is the foundation that determines whether your AI rollout builds trust or destroys it. Here's the reality. HR sits on the most sensitive data in any organization: employee records, compensation history, performance reviews, medical information, disciplinary documentation, termination records. This is not marketing data. This is not inventory data. This is people's livelihoods, their privacy, and in many cases, their legal rights. And if AI touches that data without clear guardrails, without defined boundaries around what's allowed, what requires review, and what should never be automated, you're not just creating a compliance risk. You are creating a human trust problem that no policy document can fix after the fact. So what do guardrails look like specifically for HR? They start with a simple question: what categories of data are involved in this workflow? If the answer includes anything personally identifiable, anything health-related, anything compensation-related, or anything that could affect an employment decision, that workflow needs a higher level of scrutiny before AI gets anywhere near it. They also answer the ownership question: who in your HR department is responsible for reviewing AI outputs before they affect an employee? Because AI can draft a performance review summary, but a human needs to own that output. AI can generate a job description, but a human needs to verify it doesn't introduce bias or compliance issues. And here's something most HR leaders don't think about until it's too late. Your employees are watching how you handle this. They're nervous about AI. You said so yourself. The guardrails you put in place aren't just about compliance. They're about demonstrating to your workforce that leadership is handling AI responsibly, thoughtfully, and with their interests in mind. Guardrails in HR aren't a barrier to progress. They're how you earn the right to move forward. All right, Rhonda, you've done the honest assessment. You've got your guardrails in place. You know what's protected and who owns what. Now it's time to find your boring win. And I say boring intentionally, because in HR, where the stakes are high, the data is sensitive, and your workforce is watching, boring is your best friend right now. Here's what I mean. Your first AI pilot inside HR should not be ambitious. It should not be transformational. It should not make a great headline in the company newsletter. It should be so practical, so low risk, and so clearly useful that nobody questions why you did it. So what does that look like for an HR director at an energy company? Maybe it's job description drafting. Instead of a team member spending 2 hours writing a job description from scratch, they use AI to generate a first draft based on a defined template. Then a human reviews it, edits it, and approves it before it goes anywhere. Low risk, measurable time savings, clear human review, step built in. Maybe it's onboarding documentation, summarizing new hire paperwork into a plain language checklist that employees can actually understand. AI drafts it. HR reviews it. Nobody's personnel file gets touched. Nobody's compliance obligation gets compromised. Maybe it's policy summarization, taking a dense 50-page employee handbook section and using AI to generate a readable summary for a specific audience. Again, AI drafts, human reviews, human approves. Notice what all three of those have in common. They're all drafting and summarizing tasks. They don't involve making decisions about employees. They don't touch sensitive personal data. They don't automate anything that affects someone's employment status, compensation, or performance record. They just make existing work faster, cleaner, and easier to manage. That's your first pilot, not a revolution. A drafting assistant with guardrails and a human in the loop. And here's why this matters beyond just saving time. When you run a small, controlled pilot and it works, you now have evidence. Real, documented, measurable evidence that AI can be used responsibly inside your HR department. That evidence is what you bring to leadership. Not a promise, not a vendor demo, not enthusiasm. Evidence. And in HR, where trust is everything, evidence is the only currency that matters.
AI hot tip.
Here's this week's AI hot tip. If you're an HR leader trying to figure out where to start with AI, don't start with tools. Start with a data map. This week, take 30 minutes and write down every category of data your HR department handles on a regular basis. Employee records, compensation, performance, medical, onboarding, offboarding, training, communications. Now, next to each category, ask one simple question: would I be comfortable if AI touched this data today with no additional guardrails in place? Some categories will be an easy yes. Drafting a job description template involves no personal data whatsoever. Go ahead. Some will be a clear no. Anything touching compensation, medical records, or performance decisions needs guardrails, review processes, and probably a conversation with legal or compliance before AI gets anywhere near it. And some will be a maybe, and that maybe is where your guardrails conversation needs to start. That 30-minute exercise is one of the most valuable things you can do in your first 30 days. It gives you a clear picture of where AI can help immediately, where it needs more structure, and where it should wait entirely. You can't build responsible guardrails around data you haven't mapped. So start there. All right, let's bring it home. Here's what we covered today. First, before you touch a single AI tool, get honest about where you actually are. Where is AI already showing up in your department? What does your compliance landscape require? And where are your workforce trust gaps? You can't build responsibly on a foundation you haven't examined. Second, protect what matters before you build anything. HR sits on the most sensitive data in any organization. Guardrails aren't a barrier to progress. They're how you earn the right to move forward responsibly and maintain the trust of your workforce while you do it. Third, find your boring win. Job description drafting, onboarding documentation, policy summarization, low risk, measurable, human reviewed. That's your first pilot. Not a revolution, a responsible starting point that gives you real evidence to bring to leadership. And Rhonda, thank you. Your question was exactly the right one at exactly the right time. HR leaders are on the front lines of how AI gets introduced to employees inside organizations. The fact that you're approaching this carefully and thoughtfully, that's not paralysis. That's leadership.
Optimistic AI thought of the week.
And finally, here's this week's optimistic AI thought of the week. There's a narrative out there that AI is coming for HR, that it's going to automate hiring decisions, replace recruiters, and make human resources less human. I want to push back on that, because what I actually see when I talk to HR leaders who are approaching AI thoughtfully, leaders like Rhonda, is something very different. I see people who are using AI to eliminate the administrative burden that has always gotten in the way of the real work of HR. The drafting, the summarizing, the documentation, the repetitive communication tasks that eat up hours every week and leave HR professionals with less time for the work that actually matters, supporting people, building culture, navigating complex human situations that no algorithm will ever be able to handle. AI done right doesn't make HR less human. It makes HR more human by giving the people in those roles more time, more capacity, and more energy to focus on what only humans can do. That's not a threat. That's an opportunity. And the HR leaders who approach it carefully, responsibly, and with their workforce's trust in mind, those are the ones who are going to look back 5 years from now and say, we got this right. That's a wrap on episode 2 of season 3 of the Blair AI Rollout Podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, if you heard yourself in Rhonda's question, here's your next step. Head over to blairts.com/framework. Take the free AI readiness score, explore the Blair AI Rollout Framework, and find out exactly where your organization stands today. Whether you're in HR, operations, IT, or any other discipline, the framework gives you a structured, no-hype path forward. Link is in the show notes. And Rhonda, if you're listening, thank you. Your question is going to help a lot of HR leaders take their first step in the right direction. Keep those listener questions coming. This show exists because of questions like Rhonda's. Send yours to steve@blairts.com. I read every single one, and your question could drive a future episode. If you found value today, please take 30 seconds and leave a review wherever you listen. It helps more operations leaders find the show, and honestly, it means everything. I'm Steve. This is the Blair AI Rollout Podcast. Let's roll this out the right way.